Over the last year or so, I've been working on this platformer game with a boss fight, a level editor, and a cube. I'm gonna be showcasing why this game took me over a year and pretty much the whole timeline. This is also out now on Steam for free, by the way, so you know. Okay, first of all, new Unity project. XDev did that. After 2 hours of Blender modeling, we have the cube. I don't know how to use Blender. Let's now make some player movement. Just do a bit of this, change some values, and yeah, the player moves. It's pretty floaty, and that's a feature now. Before I go any further, I want to lay the foundations for this game, which is pretty much atmosphere and mechanics. First, let's make the atmosphere. I made a little room for the player. I added 2 portals in order to switch levels, some lasers in the bottom, and then we made a color scheme. Taking a bit of inspiration from this bracket tutorial on color theory, and a couple of attempts later, we came up with this. I also added post-processing like color correction, bloom, a lot of bloom, and some other minor tweaks. Additionally, I added some atmospheric particles around the environment to make it feel a bit more alive, and I'm pretty proud of it. Mind you, I have no idea what I'm doing when I'm making particles. Anyways, now for the mechanics. I decided to add 5 objects to the game. Pretty simple. Spikes, buttons, launchpads, lasers, and turrets. Let's leave the last 3 for later though and focus on the spikes and buttons for now. After an intense modeling session, we now have a spike model. Coding the spikes was pretty simple, but what was interesting is the effect that we made for the spikes. Instead of being a simple color, XDev made a little shader that changes its color based on an image, which created this. Yeah, it flashes now. Now for the buttons. I first made a cuboid, which is the base of the button, and a cylinder for the actual button. Whenever the player collides with it, it turns blue and the portal opens. I also made a quick main menu and these sick animations that got me like 30 likes on Twitter. Okay, you know what? Enough of this generic platformer content. It's time to spice this up by adding an entire level editor. Where do I begin? Let's just start by creating a place to create levels and see your saved levels. That seems relatively easy. In terms of UI design, here's what I did. I think it gets the job done, but it's time to make it function. We can now create levels. The system behind it is very cursed, but it works. Not the best in terms of performance. We'll get to the level loading menu later as we don't really have levels to test it with, which I guess leaves us with the actual level editor. This level editor caused me to go mentally insane and write the most horrible code that a game developer has ever seen. The beginning went pretty fine though. I first decided to take out what I thought was the hardest part of the project, which is loading the level inside of the editor. I first pulled up Notepad to design the level file structure because instead of using an actual reliable format, I decided to make one all by myself. It's kinda like gluing Legos instead of building them. After multiple sleepless nights, I coded the basics of the level loading with some pretty nice code. 1,000 lines of it to be exact. Now what? I guess we could try the UI. It's a lot more important than you think because behind the UI code lies placing objects, editing them, and stuff like that, so it was a big thing to undertake. New script, editor controls. This one's longer than the last one and significantly more cursed, but we'll get to that. I made an image for the level editor buttons and added all the available objects in this corner as well as extra buttons in the right corner for deleting and such. Next up would be placing objects, but I kinda forgot to finish them all in order to add them, so let's do that real quick. Lasers, done. Turret, done. It's broken. Launchpad, done. Yeah, adding them in was suspiciously simple, but we still haven't added the object selection system, so let's do that now. I don't really understand the code now that I look back at it, so I can't really explain what it does, but man does it work sometimes. For placing objects, we can just have a fake object that is a preview of the thing that you're going to place, which follows the mouse, and when the player clicks, the object spawns. I also added in selecting objects, the ability to move, rotate, and scale them, as well as selecting multiple objects by holding control. After that, I added deleting objects by either selecting them and pressing delete or by using the delete tool with a mouse, and I coded an entire algorithm in order to delete multiple objects at once, which I found out later was useless and could be done in one line of code. Awesome. We now have a core part of the editor implemented. Finally, I'm gonna make a play in stop mode for the editor as well so you can test out your levels. This looks very easy as Unity has a time system where you can stop time if you feel like it, but it's not because we only want to stop time for some objects but not the UI, which led me to creating another script which is 300 lines long to stop parts of certain objects, which was a nightmare to code. Game development is fun. I don't know how I did not die inside while coding it though. Time kinda just passed, so that's something. I think it's time to discuss the wretched properties panel. Alright, the whole plan was to have a small window that you could move around with a bunch of options for the object you have selected, such as the position, and for the life of me, I could not do it. Every method I tried flat out did not work, and I ended up completely losing motivations for a whopping 2 months, which means that no progress was made during the time of December to February of 2023, so I thought that I was pretty much done with the game until I made the impulsive decision to open back the project determined to fix this. Oh yeah, it was all one checkbox that caused it by the way. Works now. Sick. Anyways, we're back to working on this game, which we finally found a name for. It's called Airborne, but we're not finished with the properties window yet. That was just to make it move. I then coded the actual property system, and I wrote the worst script that I have written before. I genuinely cannot describe how bad and unreadable this code is. We are ready to do a playtest with some game developer friends though. Here are their names if you're interested. After a couple of days, some of them have done a playtest of the level editor, and okay, let's just fix the issues one by one. First of all, one of the playtesters has a Mac. The game is for Windows. Not my problem, not gonna lie. Secondly, the game fails to function. Yeah, so let's do a small lesson on countries in order to pinpoint the issue. So you see, a bunch of countries like to write decimals with commas, while a bunch of others like to do it with dots. And when writing it to a file and reading it again, that is a problem, because the game only reads dots. So when a European person, for example, tries to make a level, when they reload it, everything is gonna have their decimal points ignored, and all positions with a decimal will be gigantic. That's a huge problem and not an easy solution, but the game isn't gonna fix itself, so let's get coding. I needed to pretty much refactor almost the entire level loading section of the editor script in order for it to factor both ways of checking for decimals, which sucked. Okay, let's calm down. Something a bit more positive is that you can now add text to your levels. I generally added a bunch of micro features to the editor just like that one, such as the general level settings over the next days, which brings us to level saving. That was way easier than I thought. Not very performant though, but we'll be fine, and autosave is also there. We're in March now, right? And a pigeon told me about this presentation similar to Nintendo Direct but for indie games, called Devs on Display, and I am now obliged to make a trailer, so we should probably do that. Alright, first, we take a bunch of footage. We already have a problem though. There are only like 3 levels that have been made for Airborne. In other words, there's pretty much no footage, so instead of making more levels, I took the interesting decision of using the same clips like a billion times but slightly modifying them. Anyways, secondly, we need music, but I don't really have the talent for that, you know, but my friend Mazroid does. Like, seriously, listen to their music, it's great stuff. So they volunteered to make me some music, and damn is it good. So we're gonna use it in the trailer as well as the game. Thirdly, we import all of our assets into Premiere Pro and figure out the structure of the trailer. Firstly, there's an intro while the first track builds up, and then it shows some normal gameplay. Later, it showcases the editor and jumps into the drum and bass track that mazroid made for the game, which is pretty intense and shows how hard the game is. It sticks the landing with a more calm version of the first track, as well as some info about the game. The trailer could definitely be improved as it's pretty low quality due to the footage being zoomed in and also some clips being reused twice, but there was some hype when the game got showcased in the presentation and it went really well. The game also now finally has a Steam page, better late than never, and we also decided on the price, which is free, because I'd much rather see more people play my game rather than see less people buying it. It also took me like 10 hours to set it up because of a stupid bug on my end. Whoops. Remember that load level menu that we left half unfinished? Because I just did, so let's finish it. This is by far the most unoptimized part of the game, as if you have a lot of levels, it can create a huge lag spike for multiple seconds, which is not the most pleasant experience. But it's honestly quite hard to do it asynchronously because my mind cannot comprehend that. Anywho, it now functions and also sorts all the levels based on how recent they are, which took me longer than you might expect, but the level editor is finished for now. That was quick. We're in April right now, by the way. I want to code one last thing before I take a break, which is all 9 levels with Steam Workshop. I found a great tutorial by One Wheel Studio, who you should definitely check out because there's pretty much no documentation on the Steam Workshop code, so you have no idea what anything does. Let's first make the search menu with these filters available. Now, we copy some code from the video, and yeah, that's literally it. And I guess it was time to take a month-long break because I was losing my sanity. Anyways, it's May now, and this game is about as dry as the West Sahara because there's no content apart from the level editor. So we need to make levels. 100 of them to be exact. Yeah, by the way, I made a plan earlier for the game which includes those 100 levels as well as a boss fight, and we better get to work because I'm tired of working on this game that looks like a 12-year-old made it, so let's get to creating. All levels are going to be made in game because we have a level editor if I remember correctly, so boom, here's the first level. Yeah, the first couple of levels are going to be pretty simple because I want the learning curve to be very sudden, so the first levels are just going to be like a tutorial. A couple of days later and we have the first 25 levels finished. Looks like this game is finally going to come out after almost a year. Yeah, that did not happen. It's second time I lose motivation. Hell yeah. I then proceeded not to work on the game at all during almost the entire summer. I am so inconsistent, but let's just skip all the way to August where I had to make a critical decision if I wanted to finish the game this year, which was the levels. Either I could make all 100 levels and have the game basically never released because I had no motivation for that, or reduce the scope to 50 levels. I decided to host a Twitter poll to decide what happens, and surprise surprise, 50 levels it is. Now I have no excuses. Before doing anything, anything, I need to pick out a release date. After rolling a couple of dice, we got January 5th, 2024. So now we need to finish this before that. Anyways, XDev woke up and was like, hell yeah, let's help out with the levels, and he made some pretty good levels. I started cranking out levels like crazy too, admittedly some bad ones, but it's fine, we'll clean those up. And 40 out of 50 of the levels are complete. But I'm tired of working again. This time though, I have a trick up my sleeve. A distraction. The level editor. Yeah, it lacks some polish and I don't really want to make levels, so boom, shortcuts. You can now create levels like a Vim programmer. How fun. Also, you can now switch the gizmos for the object you've selected by buttons, because it was only a keybind before, which is not confusing at all, and I fixed a bunch of bugs. Also, we need some more music and I lack the talent if you remember, but it's all good because Anne came in clutch. She's an incredibly awesome music artist, which you should check out in the description, and she voluntarily offered to make music for Airborne. One of the tracks she made is actually currently playing in the background. I also decided to help by making a music track, which I think came out pretty nice. Back to the levels, we only have 10 more levels, 5 each for me and XDev. I made the first 3 levels of mine pretty quickly, and damn are they difficult. However, the last 2 took me an extended amount of time due to how big they are. Especially level 50, which I will not spoil, but spoiler alert, it's pretty good. And also big, like very. All levels are finished, finally. There's no time to celebrate though, we're getting closer to the deadline. It's November and I have barely started working on the boss fight. I won't talk about it too much because I don't want to spoil it, but there's gonna be a small cutscene with, let's just say, some cool shit, and after that there is a boss fight indeed. Listen, I can't say much without spoiling, so you'll have to see for yourself. Anyways, remember when we made a game for Devs on Display? Shit, it's Devs on Display too, and you already know I'm obligated to make a trailer, but now we have 50 levels so we can actually work with them. I first recorded a playthrough of the entire game, as well as some footage for the level editor. I imported it all into Premiere and followed the same structure as the previous trailer, but with way better footage and overall look. This trailer has something special though, I'll let you see for yourself. Also managed to get a few wishlists from being on Jacksfield's stream, which was also epic.
I'm gonna have to stop you right there. I'm gonna have to stop you right there.
Anyways, only a few days are left, and the only thing remaining is to polish up the boss fight. This took me longer than expected, and I was quite stressed, but we're here. 3,000 words later, and Airborne is finally out now on Steam for completely free. Thanks to everyone that helped in the development of this game, especially the playtesters, as well as the 2 music artists that worked with me. Also, thank you for watching. If you're still here, trying out Airborne on Steam would be a really nice way to support me.